class, this is Mrs. Albritton of Albritton's Math Class, AMC. Now in this video, we're going to look at adding and subtracting complex numbers. But first, let's review what is a complex number. So a complex number is any number that can be written of the form a plus bi, where a is the real part and the bi is the imaginary part. We found out that imaginary numbers are numbers that exist and they're new to us. So we've got I, which is an imaginary number, is equal to the square root of -1. That's considered the principal square root of -1. We're going to be working a lot with I squared, which is equal to -1 as we do these operations, specifically multiplication. But let's take a look at addition. So I've got two complex numbers that I am going to add together. Now, how do I know these are complex numbers? Well, I clearly see that I have a real part and an imaginary part in this expression and here. Real part, imaginary part. How do we add complex numbers? We combine like terms. And we're familiar with like terms from polynomial addition, for example. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add the real parts together and we're gonna add the imaginary parts together. I am going to actually group them together so that we can see that. So in my first grouping, I'm gonna have 7 plus 4, the real parts together. And I'm gonna add -3i plus 10i, my imaginary parts together. So let's do that. Now, when I do 7 plus 4, I end up with 11, plus -3 plus 10i gives me 7i. So there's my answer. And it turned out to be a complex number because there's the real part, there's the imaginary part. Number 2, again, I've got two complex numbers that I'm gonna add together. So I'm gonna group them together. I'm gonna combine these like terms. First, I've got -2 plus 10 added to 5i, the imaginary part, minus 4i. So I group my real parts together, my imaginary parts together, like terms. -2 plus 10 is 8, plus 5 minus 4i is I. And here's my complex number answer. So let's take a look at subtracting complex numbers. Hello class, this is Mrs. Albritton, and we're going to continue with our video on adding and subtracting complex numbers. So take a look at number 3 and 4. So instead of adding two complex numbers, now we're going to subtract those. Now, we discussed the fact that there's a shortcut method for actually subtracting complex numbers, where we use something that we learned about when we were in middle school, when we were dividing fractions, and we talked about something called keep, change, flip. Well, that actual mnemonic device, that way to remember how to do it, will serve us in subtracting complex numbers too. So we talked about the fact that we could use keep, change, and flip when we subtract. And what that essentially is going to do is change our subtraction problems into addition problems. Because when we say keep, we're going to actually keep the first expression, the 5 minus 7i. We're going to change the subtraction to addition. And the flip in this case is to change the signs of the terms in the second expression. So instead of +2, let's make this a -2. And instead of a +4i, we'll make it a -4i. All right, so let's go ahead and combine our like terms. We're gonna put the real parts together, we're gonna put the imaginary parts together, and we will add them. So here I'm grouping my 5 plus -2. Remember, we're adding these instead of subtracting, but we're going to get the answer that we're supposed to get. Now I'm going to group my imaginary numbers together. This is -7i, minus, because this is a -4i, so I'm going to put minus 4i. Now I could have put plus a -4i, but I don't want to have too many operations sitting side by side. So let's work this out and see what we get. So here we're going to get 5 plus a -2 is 3, plus Negative 7 and a negative 4i gives me a negative 11i. And then I'm going to rewrite this final answer and eliminate these two operations side by side so it won't look confusing. So my final answer is 3 minus 11i. Why is it minus? Because positive times a negative gives a negative. Okay? Let's take a look at number 4. So for this complex number minus that one, let's keep that mnemonic device going. Keep, change, flip. So if I keep the first one as it is, that's 4 minus 8i, and I change from subtraction to addition, the flip part of an expression is to change the sign. So if this is a positive 9, I'll make it a negative 9, all right? When this is a negative 6i, let's change it to a positive 6i. And now we will group the like terms together. We'll put the real parts together and we'll put the imaginary parts together. So I've got 4 plus negative 9. 4 plus a negative 9. And we're adding these because we did the keep, change, flip. So now let me put my imaginary parts together. Negative 8i plus 6i. All right, let's do the work. 4 plus a negative 9 is negative 5, plus negative 8 and a positive 6i is a negative 2i. And again, I don't want two operations side by side because it may get confusing. So let's go ahead and rewrite the final answer as negative 5 minus 2i. And there's your subtraction of your complex numbers.